after multiple claims of being in possession of proof of credible allegations against India, the Modi government has read the Riot Act to Canada. And after demanding parity in diplomatic presence, Canada has been forced to buckle and has withdrawn 41 diplomats and their family members from India. Remember, this comes after the Canadian government had expelled a senior Indian diplomat, which sparked off a diplomatic standoff between the two nations. India had sent back a Canadian diplomat in a tit-for-tat move and asked Canada to downsize its diplomatic missions. India had also stopped issuing visas to Canadian citizens, and on Thursday, the Canadian government withdrew 41 diplomats and their families. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau now claims that India conveyed to unethically remove diplomatic immunity of 41 diplomats and their families. And this action is not just unprecedented, but contrary to the international law. He also went on to say that India is making life unbelievably difficult with their actions.
The actions that the government of India took this week are themselves contrary to international law. The government of India decided to unilaterally revoke the diplomatic immunity of 40 Canadian diplomats in India. This is a violation of the Vienna Convention governing diplomacy. And this is putting aside the allegations we made of a serious violation of international law with the alleged killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil that the Indian government could have been involved in. This is a matter, putting that aside, that all countries should be concerned about. The government of India decided to cancel, to revoke the diplomatic protections of 40 diplomats working in Canada. They're working in India. This is something that has far-reaching consequences for the diplomatic world that I know many countries are very worried about. The Indian government is making it unbelievably difficult for life as usual to continue for millions of people in India and in Canada. And they're doing it by contravening a very basic principle of diplomacy.
My colleague Rishabh and Aditi joining us on the broadcast with the details. Rishabh, it's important to mention that this is just a reaction to Canada's escalation in tensions with India. Canada has been harboring Khalistanis. There's no action on the diplomats being threatened in Canada. More importantly, India is only seeking parity in presence of diplomats, which is consistent with the Vienna Convention.
Well, definitely. India has asked for a parity, and this hasn't happened overnight. For over a month, the discussions on the parity of diplomatic numbers have been on. Initially, the date that was given to Canada was 10th of October, and India was adamant that Canada needs to bring down the numbers to a level which shows parity by 10th of October. But given that there were negotiations and Canada tried to buy time from India, the new date was yesterday, October 28. Now what we are given to understand that 41 Canadian diplomats have been removed. But the sources suggest that this hasn't impacted their consular services. And to hold the in-person visa in consulates is, solely their unilateral decision. Apart from that, Matthew Miller, for that matter, UK Foreign Office, coming up with the reaction point is this is between India and Canada. There is
absolutely, but Trudeau saying that Indian government is making it unbelievably difficult for life as usual. I also want to go across to Aditi, who's joining us, because US expressing concern should also be about the unfounded allegations that Canada is making against India, Aditi.
Exactly. Rightly said, Pratibha, and Canada is still awaited to provide any evidence against their allegations on India that we have a role to play in Nijja's death. Now, over here is the statement of the United States. It says that we are concerned by the departure of Canadian diplomats from India in response to the Indian government's demand of Canada to significantly reduce its diplomatic presence. Resolving differences requires diplomats on the ground. We have urged the Indian government not to insist upon a reduction in Canada's diplomatic presence and to cooperate in the ongoing Canadian investigation. We expect India to uphold its obligations under the 1961 Vienna Convention on diplomatic relations, including with respect to privileges and immunities enjoyed by accredited members of Canada's diplomatic mission.